Well, thank you very much indeed, Anne Widdecombe. And our final speaker is against the motion, Stephen Fry, a bit of an all-rounder really. Stephen can turn his hand to many things. Stephen, let's hear your views.
I genuinely believe that the Catholic Church is not, to put it at its mildest, a force for good in the world. And therefore it is important for me to try and marshal my facts as well as I can to explain why I think that. But I want first of all to say that I have no quarrel, no argument, and I wish to express no contempt for individual devout and pious members of that church. It would be impertinent and wrong of me to express any antagonism towards any individual who wishes to find salvation in whatever form they wish to express it. That, to me, is sacrosanct as much as any article of faith is sacrosanct to anyone of any church or any faith in the world. It's very important. It's also very important to me, as it happens, that I have my own beliefs. They are a belief in the Enlightenment, they are a belief in the eternal adventure of trying to discover moral truth in the world. And there is nothing, sadly, that the Catholic Church and its hierarchs likes to do more than to attack the Enlightenment. It did so at the time. Reference was made to Galileo and the fact that he was tortured for trying to explain the Copernican theory of the universe. Just imagine in this square mile how many people were burned for reading the Bible in English. And one of the principal burners and torturers of those who tried to read the Bible in English here in London was Thomas More. Now, that's a long time ago. It's not relevant, except that it was only last century that Thomas More was made a saint, and it was only in the year 2000 that the last pope, the Pole, he made Thomas More the patron saint of politicians. This is a man who put people on the rack for daring to own a Bible in English. He tortured them for owning a Bible in their own language. The idea that the Catholic Church exists to disseminate the word of the Lord is nonsense. It is the only owner of the truth for the billions that it likes to boast about, because those billions are uneducated and poor, as again it likes to boast about. It's perhaps unfair of me as a gay man to moan that this enormous institution, which is the largest and most powerful church on earth, has over 1 billion, as they like to tell us, members, each one of whom is under strict instructions to believe the dogmas of the church, but may wrestle with them personally, of course. It's hard for me to be told that I'm evil, because I think of myself as someone who is filled with love, whose only purpose in life was to achieve love, and who feels love for so much of nature and the world and for everything else. We certainly don't need the stigmatization, the victimization that leads to the playground bullying when people say you're a disordered, morally evil individual. That's not nice. It isn't nice. The kind of cruelty in Catholic education, the kind of let's not call it child abuse, it was child rape. The kind of child rape that went on systematically for so long. Let's imagine that we can overlook this and say it is nothing whatever to do with the structure and nature of the Catholic Church and the twisted, neurotic and hysterical way that its leaders are chosen. The celibacy, the nuns, the monks, the priesthood. This is not natural and normal, ladies and gentlemen, in 2009. It really isn't. I have yet to approach one of the subjects dearest to my heart. I've made 3 documentary films on the subject of AIDS in Africa. My particular love is the country of Uganda. It's one of the countries I love most in the world. There was a period when Uganda had the worst incidence of HIV/AIDS in the world. But through an amazing initiative called ABC, abstinence, be faithful, correct use of condoms, those 3 I'm not denying that abstinence is a very good way of not getting AIDS. It really is. It works. So does being faithful. But so do condoms. And do not deny it. And this Pope, not satisfied with saying condoms are against our religion, please consider first abstinence, second being faithful to your partner. He spreads the lie that condoms actually increase the incidence of AIDS. He actually makes sure that aid is conditional on saying no to condoms. I have been to, there's a hospital in Bwindi in the west of Uganda where I do quite a lot of work. It is unbelievable, the pain and suffering you see. Now, yes, it is true, abstinence will stop it. It's the strange thing about this church. It is obsessed with sex. Absolutely obsessed. Now, they will say, we with our permissive society and our rude jokes are obsessed. No, we have a healthy attitude. We like it, it's fun, it's jolly, because it's a primary impulse. It can be dangerous and dark and difficult. It's a bit like food in that respect, only even more exciting. The only people who are obsessed with food are anorexics and the morbidly obese. And that, in erotic terms, is the Catholic Church in a nutshell. Do you know who will be the last person ever to be accepted as a prince of the church? The Galilean carpenter, that Jew. They would kick him out before he tried to cross the threshold. He would be so ill at ease in the church. What would he think? What would he think of St. Peter's? What would he think of the wealth and the power and the self-justification and the wheedling apologies? The Pope could decide that all this power, all this wealth, this hierarchy of princes and bishops and archbishops and priests and monks and nuns could be sent out in the world with money and art treasures to put them back in the countries that they once raped and violated. They could give that money away and they could concentrate on the apparent essence of their belief. And then I would stand here and say the Catholic Church may well be a force for good in the world. But until that day, it is not. Thank you.
Well, Stephen Fry, thank you very much. So you've heard all our four speakers. It's going to be your turn, the audience, next. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about what you want to ask our panelists, any questions or comments you may wish to make. Because I'm going to give you now the result of that vote that you all gave when you were coming in here to Central Hall. The motion is the Catholic Church is a force for good in the world. In favour of the motion were 678. Against the motion that the Catholic Church is a force for good was 1,102. Big difference. However, 346 of you were undecided. So, Archbishop and Anne Widdecombe, you're going to have to not win over the undecided, but actually convert some from the other side. Let's see if we can sway any opinions here amongst all of you by listening to some points that you wish to raise with the panel. And then we're going to ask you to vote again. Now, put your hand up if you want to speak. If you go on, I've got a little button here that will render you inaudible. So please keep your comments to the point. You're standing, sir, so you must be terribly keen and enthusiastic, so I will come to you first. Say your name and designation if you wish to, if you think it may be relevant.
My name is Keith Wood, I'm the Executive Director of the National Secular Society, and I've just come back from the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, where I put to the United Nations Human Rights Council the fact that the Holy See, its alter ego of the Catholic Church, has has broken 5 articles of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Just one of those, because it's supposed to produce annual reports, and it's 12 years behind in doing those. It did not deny, the Holy See came back and did not deny any of the charges that I made on the 22nd of September. Okay. All it said...
You're losing us. You're losing us. What is your point, please?
My point is that it did not deny breaking 5 articles of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child on child abuse. And I think it's disgraceful that it should be allowed to do it and that the international community should let it get away with it.
Okay, thank you. We'll take another question. There's a lady here.
I would like to ask Mr. Hutchins if he is only against the Catholic Church or against all religions.
Shall I go to the podium?
I'm just going to take one more. No, just stay here.
I think I heard.
Okay, anybody upstairs? Can I see? I'm sorry, the lights are in my eyes.
Hi there. This is a question for Christopher Hitchens. Many people today feel that we're really living in some kind of moral crisis, and you can see that all around us. Now, if one thing that the Catholic Church does do for good, in my opinion, is give us the 10 Commandments, a very basic, obvious way of giving us some kind of moral guidance. Would you not agree with that?
Okay, well, let's just get a response here from our panel. So, 10 Commandments. Christopher Hitchens, that question was directed to you. I don't think the Catholic Church has a monopoly on the 10 Commandments, but nevertheless,
is this on?
It is on, just stay.
Am I audible? Yeah. The lady in front began by asking me, do I reserve this condemnation only for the Holy Roman Church and not for other Catholics, for example, like Byzantine Catholics and Protestants and so on? I think they're all the same equivalent glimpses of the identical untruth. And I might use my answer to just say something about Anne Widdecombe. I knew we wouldn't get through without talk about money being given away on supposedly humanitarian projects in the Third World. You never don't get that. You never get the admission that it's done to proselytize for religion either, which my friends at Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, for example, or Amnesty International don't do. They don't proselytize. They do it for the sake of their fellow creatures. But if I'm debating with a Mormon and I say, are you serious? Joseph Smith got a special revelation on plates of gold in upstate New York, and I ridicule the absurdity of the Church of Latter-day Saints, he's going to say to me, boy, you should see our missionaries in Bolivia, though. It's always the same. Are you going to grant this to Hamas? The whole claim of Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza is they provide social services. Is this claim valid for them too? What nonsense. No. The proper study of mankind is man, and the proper application of humanitarianism is humanistic, in my judgment. Now, of the commandments, the first, I can't list them exactly in order, I have them in my head. The first 2 or 3 are entirely about fearing the author of the orders. Entirely about being terrified of someone who you're enjoined to love. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but the idea of compulsory love has always struck me as a bit shady, especially if you're ordered to love someone who you absolutely must fear. So the first 3 are, look out for me and keep at least one day of mine where you'll be terrified full time. Wait a second. Well, it is 10 Commandments, darling.
All right, yes, I know, but I do want to give the other side a chance to come in.
Okay.
Have you made your point there? Okay, Anne Widdecombe, 10 Commandments, firm bedrock of moral teaching.
Yes, but as Christopher Hitchens took the opportunity to reply to a point I'd made, I'm going to take the opportunity to reply to a point that Stephen made, which is very simply this. He says the Church is obsessed with sex. No, its critics are obsessed with sex. There's no sex in the Creed. There's no sex in the Lord's Prayer. There's no sex in the liturgy. But when critics start on the Catholic Church, all they can talk about is sex. But of sex more later. If we can come to the 10 Commandments, I would have thought it quite obvious that the 10 Commandments set out a blueprint for a moral and successful society. Let us just look at some of them. Honour thy father and thy mother. Think of today's disrespect. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, and thou shalt not covet. Tell that to the bankers with their bonuses. I actually think that if you look at the moral precepts of the Ten Commandments, they're as relevant now as they were then.
Okay. Archbishop, do you want to come in briefly on this? And that point about the rights of the child, I mean, there's something that's come up quite a bit.
Well, first of all, the United Nations conventions that he's talking about, they need to be well understood. And it is a fact that there is not a unanimity even in the interpretation of the content and the meaning of many of those conventions he's referring to. I am not particularly personally conversant with the issues he is raising, the 5 accusations that he has laid against the Holy See, but I'm sure that the permanent observer of the Holy See in Geneva would have given adequate answer to his question. As for defense of children, taking care of children, I think we don't have to go to the United Nations to learn about that. Oh, by the way, the 10 Commandments are in the Bible, but my father knew it before he became a Christian. All African religions recognized those basic norms of morality. Everybody knows that.
All right. Let's take some more questions from the floor. Okay.
Don't need the Bible for that.
Chap there.
Hi. This is a very simple question for Anne Widdecombe. You might think it may be a naive question. If so, I'd be very happy to be educated. Why is it wrong for a woman to become a priest, but perfectly acceptable for a woman such as yourself to become an MP?
Okay, thanks. We'll come to that in a moment. I think we're going to go just here next. Yeah.
Hello. It's a query for Anne and the Archbishop. Anne raised a point regarding the billions that are poured into Africa for famine relief, aid and things like that. She also mentioned the billions that are raised in collections. What is the point there? Are you trying to say that the billions that are poured into Africa are raised by collections? Because we don't seem to see any dissolution of the wealth that is sat in the Vatican and in the palaces of the Vatican. And coupled with that, I respect your faith, I respect the message you give, but why, to pass that message on, do you need the finery that you wear? Do you need the palace of the Vatican?
Okay. Point made. I think we're going to go here. Yeah.
Hello. My name is Matthew Hamden, and I've got a brief question for the Archbishop. Sorry, can you hear me?
No. Now we can. Start again.
Oh, thank goodness. Archbishop, of which current Roman Catholic policy are you most ashamed?
Which current Catholic policy are you most ashamed of? I'll repeat it. Okay, let's stick with the Archbishop on that. So, Archbishop, which current Catholic policy, this question is, are you most ashamed of?
I don't know whether you're serious in that question or you just want to provoke, because if all our Catholic policies are not just dreamt overnight by the Pope or anybody. If it is a Catholic policy, it is reasonable, it is based on our traditions and scriptures, and there's none about which I'm ashamed, if that is the answer to your question.
Okay, and the other question about, I think the Vatican is worth something like, is it $2.5 billion it has, and it invests it all over the place and so on. Do you need all that money? Was that question up there, all the finery and all the rest of it?
I was trying to listen, I couldn't quite get...
His question was, you talked about the billions in aid that goes to Africa, dispensed by Catholic organisations one way or another, but what about the wealth of the Vatican itself? Do you need all that money?
If it means that they should carry St. Peter's Basilica to Africa, that's not the answer. And I don't know what billions of that he says the Vatican has. The billions of this world, I think, are not in the Vatican. We know where they are, and they are not coming to Africa. On the contrary, Africa has been sucked dry by those people, those multinationals. They are the ones who should be bringing our money back to us. I think we are targeting the wrong place. I come from Africa, and the funds that come from church agencies for us are very important. We know that normally in most of those countries, we should not even be looking up to people to help us. We should be helping ourselves.